Throughout the years, we have seen live services come and go, and as the market of live services becomes more and more saturated, it feels like the pace at which live services die is picking up. It was almost 2 years ago that I talked about how live services are dying by the dozen, and I could come up with a bunch more examples just 4 months ago when I released this video titled More Live Services Are Dying by the Dozen. And now we're going at a pace where in the last 3 months, 4 major live services have died. So we know that Concord, for example, died on September 3rd, 2024, when Sony and PlayStation made the announcement that the game would be taken offline on September 6th, 2024, which is just 2 weeks after this game's launch. They essentially made an incredibly generic hero shooter that ultimately didn't stand out in any way, shape, or form, or that aesthetically wasn't eye-catching enough. PlayStation also decided ultimately, despite hinting that this game might potentially have a future as they reevaluate options, the ultimate decision was announced on October 29th, 2024 to shut down Firewalk Studios, the developers behind Concord. So that's about as unceremoniously a live service can die, one of the worst AAA flops in AAA history. And then just earlier this month, we learned that Ubisoft would discontinue development on X Defiant, their attempt on basically a Call of Duty style game, with this game servers remaining active up until June 3rd, 2025. After that, servers will be taken offline. The game will no longer be accessible. This is another live service that just didn't last particularly long, trying to tackle a genre in a market that's oversaturated and that's already filled by high-profile titles that have become the norm for people who like that particular genre. And then just 2 days later, Squeenix announced the shutdown of one of their live services, Foam Stars, which many will recognize as a Splatoon-like, but it just had nowhere near the draw power that Splatoon did, and I don't know that it did anything so much better than Splatoon that it drew people away from that experience. Ultimately, this ended up being a free-to-play game that never really garnered much of an audience. And that finally brings us to the 4th live service that has died in the last 3 months. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I mean, this right here was a foregone conclusion, but we're finally seeing the announcement that the game will no longer be receiving any updates after its final season. Season 4, which begins on December 10th, 2024, introduces Deathstroke as a new character, adds a bunch of, new weapons and some new content here and there, alongside the inclusion of an offline mode. I will give them credit for actually including an offline mode that will allow this game to be preserved so that when servers shut down, it's not a game that, because it's online only, it'll be inaccessible, especially given that this is a title that does have a single-player campaign that can be played solo. So the inclusion of an offline mode is nice. You know what else includes some nice features for your benefit? The sponsor of today's video, Surfshark VPN, a subscription service dedicated to providing security solutions to safeguard your online data and privacy. As the world becomes more and more digital, it's paramount to think about digital safety, and a leading VPN like Surfshark takes care of that thanks to its ability to encrypt your internet activity with top-grade AES 256 GCM encryption, create alternative IDs that mask your personal information and contact information, block ads, trackers, phishing attempts, and malware, provide real-time protection with its powerful antivirus, and defend against any breaches through exploitable methods like public Wi-Fi, all while providing constant alerts with its breach detection system. Surfshark VPN also offers benefits like access to a vast network of servers that allow you to essentially be online almost anywhere in the world, thereby granting access to content from platforms like streaming services that would otherwise be blocked or restricted in your region. And for gamers to experience regional censorship with versions of games that have been modified and downgraded, this feature will allow you to bypass that and download and play the original versions of those games as the developers intended. Surfshark VPN is as feature complete as a VPN can get, and you can get 4 extra months for free by using my link, surfshark.com/yongyeah, with a safety of a 30-day money-back guarantee. The link can also be found in the description and comments section below. But yeah, I don't suspect that this season is going to light the game on fire. It's just one last bit of a hurrah that is going to conclude this game in the whimper that it started in, some new skins here and there. Nothing that is going to overhaul the game in the way that it needs for it to recapture an audience base. So right here we have the deep dive of Season 4, that further goes into the offline mode and the introduction of Deathstroke, but the main point that they emphasized is that this is the final season for the game. They do say that this game will remain online for the foreseeable future, so you'll still be able to enjoy co-op with friends, as well as all previous seasonal/episodic content. You'll also have the option to play the game via the new offline mode. But in terms of seasonal content and just general major content additions, that is all going to conclude with Season 4, after which the game will essentially be a dead game walking. For now, it's not going to be like Concord, X-Defiant, and Foam Stars, where servers are going to completely shut down and the games will disappear from the face of the planet. But Suicide Squad as a live service is still dead with this announcement, as the whole point of a live service is that it's constantly live in the way it's continuously updated. New content comes in and the game evolves over the course of a long-term time period. That's no longer the case with Suicide Squad. It's akin to Anthem, where that's a game that you can still access, the servers are still online, but it is a dead live service. And yeah, I mean, the writing was on the wall with this one pretty much since launch day. Hell, even before then, when it was announced that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League would be a live service, and the marketing material highlighted a very generic looking live service that's just another looter essentially that took the Suicide Squad IP and made it just the most bland live service possible, where you give all of these characters guns and that's their primary form of offense, and you're shooting like purple orbs and stuff instead of taking advantage of the unique identities of these anti-heroes and making that the forefront of their gameplay to make each of those characters feel really unique. So there was just a lot about this game that turned people off, or that really made it very hard to be interested in this experience. And then at launch, the critical reception was incredibly tepid from critics, and among users, it was not favorable at all. And so the game saw a launch that ultimately wasn't particularly thrilling, with player numbers only having peaked at 13,459 players, which is already murky waters for a live service. And you can see right here how quickly player numbers nosedived from the peak, and it never ultimately recovered even with the release of seasonal content. Season 1 was a major test for this game, and it failed with flying colors. It launched on March 28th, 2024 alongside a new playable character, the iconic Joker. But not only were people not particularly enticed by this version of Joker in terms of the design and the direction that they went with, the content additions were all essentially recycled content. Joker himself just didn't really play all that differently, alongside the fact that they locked Joker behind a paywall or a grind wall when it was initially promised that all playable characters would be just doled out for free. And so what little goodwill this game had, and there was not much of it, completely dissipated. And so that led to a Season 1 that saw a bit of a spike to just a couple thousand players, and then that dropped off immediately. And since then, after people realized, after how bad Season 1 went, that there's really just no future for this game, and that this game was not worth sticking to for the long term because it was just not all that fun as a live service, especially compared to the competition. And so the numbers ultimately never recovered. I mean, if you look at how it did when Season 2 launched, results were abysmal. Season 2 launched late July of 2024, and yeah, it peaked at under 600 Steam players, more specifically 572 players. And going to the chart and looking at late July of 2024, you can see that during the launch of Season 2, the game never managed to push past 600 players. And then it got even worse with the launch of Season 3, with the game having only peaked at roughly 200 Steam players. During the launch of Season 3, somewhere between 150 and 250 peak players on Steam nightly. For a seasonal launch for a AAA live service, that is fatal. That is a lot of money being poured into a game that's not making its money back. Season 3 launched on October 1st, 2024, and going to Steam charts and looking at October of 2024, you can see that, yeah, player numbers were in the low triple digits. No signs of life whatsoever with a live service. Usually when there's a new season that drops, you will see a spike in players because it's new content that players will want to engage with. But when you see nothing happening in the numbers, that just means there's a complete lack of interest. Usually you can clock in these charts when a seasonal content release happened. and you can see that it's hard to spot with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The only reason that player numbers spiked recently from, basically non-existent to a couple thousand players before dropping off again is that the game was on sale for very cheap. Throughout late November, the game was discounted so much that it was on sale for $3.50 on Steam. Such a low price that a few folks are like, well, at that price point, might as well get this game and try it out. It wouldn't hurt at such a low price point. But even then, just in the low quadruple digits, it's not a whole lot of players anyway. So the fact that even at that price point, the game didn't see an impactful rise in players where there might be some hope for the title goes to show just how dead this live service is. Results proved to be devastating for Rocksteady, and it was hit by layoffs after the game completely bombed. And I genuinely don't know what the future holds for Rocksteady. I have little doubt that they're on thin ice with the overlords at Warner Brothers, and I genuinely fear for the future of Rocksteady. I think the only way Rocksteady can come back is by making the kinds of games that made them famous in the first place, the action-adventure, single-player experiences like the Arkham trilogy that they specialize in. The stuff that literally set new bars for a genre, that's what we want to see from Rocksteady, not trend-chasing bullshit that essentially does everything in the most generic fashion possible, that tries to appeal to the least common denominator and ultimately ends up appealing to no one by trying to chase a trend that's already well oversaturated and with intentions that clearly weren't driven by the idea of like what is the best thing we can make out of this IP, but driven more by, what's the most monetizable way we can launch this game. And that was the thing that led to the title's demise. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Marvel Rivals, which, yes, is another hero shooter, and it does take a lot of inspiration from Overwatch, but a lot of people are gravitating towards this because, the Marvel brand helps, but they also actually made a genuinely fun game here with a sizable roster of recognizable heroes who feel great to play and who feel like the heroes we know and love. It's got this really great art style where the character designs shine through, and so the game's just really cool to look at, and when you are playing the game, it's cool to see all of these heroes' powers pop off and seeing all of these character models who are well-realized versions of these heroes in this very stylized visual aesthetic. All of that comes together in a package that makes the game actually look appealing, and then when you play the game, it's actually fun and engaging, and it's something that just keeps you coming back. And then beyond that, it helps that for a lot of people, Marvel Rivals feels like OG Overwatch in the way that monetization is a lot more friendly than what Overwatch 2 is doing. It's going back to a 6v6 format, and there are just aspects to how Marvel Rivals functions as a game and live service currently that feel more akin to what people miss about the original Overwatch. All of that culminates in a live service that, yes, is chasing a trend, but actually does it right. And the end result is that something like Marvel Rivals has garnered 10 million players in 72 hours, which is an insane figure. Now, this is free to play, and only time will tell whether this will be able to maintain that kind of player base for the long term, but it's off to a great start. It's got a great foundation. Now it just has to keep the ball rolling and continue to garner goodwill and not screw over customers and tarnish that goodwill over the long term to maintain this kind of cadence. And no, it's not just the Marvel brand that made this game successful. Case in point, you look at Marvel's Avengers, the looter brawler live service that also went for the most generic possible kind of experience possible as far as live services are concerned, and went for a genre of game that just didn't suit an Avengers experience. That game flopped massively despite the fact that it had the Marvel brand going for it, the complete opposite result of Marvel Rivals. So it goes to highlight that just having the Marvel brand on something doesn't guarantee its success. It actually has to be an exciting and good game that's also well marketed. Marketing, I think, was where experiences like Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy failed, despite that being actually a pretty good game. And Marvel's Midnight Sun, I just think how they presented the game wasn't really something that set the world on fire, So we'll see if Marvel Rivals can keep the ball rolling, but for something like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, it is officially game over, and it will have died as it lived. with a whimper and completely unceremoniously. Live services is not the way of the future unless you come up with something really inspired or something that can be better than the existing status quo. And that's just 4 that we know of, 4 that are big enough to be more mainstream. Who knows how many other sort of lesser-known live services have died as well in the last 3 months. But yeah, there you have it, folks. That's one man's take on the current state of live services and what's going on with the death of titles like Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which a lot of people saw coming a mile away. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.